So today I'm joined by my colleague, Alex Harper, and the subject is going to be rock climbing. So it's a topic and a passion of Alex's. So yeah, let's dig into this. We'll start firstly with, what are the psychological challenges for rock climbers, Alex?
So I think some of the key challenges that can come up fall into really just maybe three categories. So I think there's the fear of falling, an obvious one, but a big problem sometimes. And the fear of failing. So more broadly speaking, getting things wrong, having high standards, and then maybe failing. And then there's also mental limitations. So this idea of setting limits that aren't realistic, thinking we can't achieve what we want to.
Right. Okay. Let's dig into the first one, and the fear of falling. And do you want to talk through maybe how what's going through a climber's head? I know we're generalizing here.
Yeah. So I think a fear of falling can probably come into basically all aspects of climbing. So it might be even when somebody first begins to get into the sport, this could be something that really holds them back and might stop them getting involved in the first place. But also once people get going, it might actually impact their ability to move on to the next level. So maybe they feel comfortable doing one particular type of climb, but if they want to do something more difficult, they have this just idea that they're going to fall. And and this kind of ties into the mental limits. And then also, I think an important aspect of this is that it can really impact emotions. So not only does it stop somebody wanting to get involved, maybe they're overcoming this fear of falling and they go ahead anyway, it can still have like a really big impact on how they feel during the climb. So instead of being in their optimal mental state and calm, they might be visualizing the fall, worrying and stressing, and that actually puts them in a less than optimal mental state.
Let's dig into that a bit more then. So as you say, emotionally they're going to be, in some cases they'll freeze, won't they? And so they'll be catastrophizing in their own mind. So many different thoughts will be running through their heads there. So I suppose as a psychologist, how can we help them so they can just bring things back and be a little bit more level and calmer, as you say?
Well, I think from the offset, especially if somebody's maybe not done psychology before, I think the first key component is always kind of understanding thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So getting someone to the point where they can differentiate between those three things and then really starting to identify patterns. So there will be just some psychological patterns that are happening where their thoughts are affecting their feelings and behaviors. And we can just identify those patterns that are coming up for them and then identify more effective patterns that would actually help them perform at their best and feel their best.
So in effect, well, supposing I'm standing there and I'm looking down and thinking, whoa, I can't go any further. I'm petrified here. So when the way you're talking there, where we're looking at potentially restructuring those thoughts to start with, which will then have a nice impact or a better impact on their emotional state, and then how they go on to proceed, whether they go up or whether they actually go down and don't just stand and hang there.
Yeah. Actually, I think a big part that plays into this as well is not only changing thoughts. It wouldn't just be maybe, oh, you're having a thought that's unhelpful, let's get rid of it. Sometimes as well, it might be that an emotion's coming up and somebody's trying to push that emotion away with different thoughts. And maybe sometimes part of the work would be tuning into emotions more honestly and thinking, is there a reason we don't want to go forwards? And is there something we can do in training that then allows us to go forwards actually on the wall?
Yeah, and there's probably an argument as well to say that the word acceptance is a big thing in this. So accepting that on a climb, you are going to experience a variety of emotions, and then having the awareness that, okay, so I'm feeling frightened, I'm thinking whatever it is I'm thinking, and then having our job in a way is to then come up with different strategies to help people overcome and carry on moving upwards.
Absolutely, yeah. Like some people would have a natural aversion to even feeling negative emotions. But yeah, I think negative emotions are part and parcel with high risk sports. And yeah, it's about befriending those emotions and making sure we're accepting the ones that we have to accept.
Also, I suppose another strategy which could be useful would be mindfulness. So how do you think being more mindful could help someone in that sort of scenario where they're looking down and they're petrified?
Yeah. So I think, it starts from the ground, I think. So I think I know that climbers can get in their best mindset if they've got a clear mind at the offset. And so we can employ mindfulness from the get-go, where they're really taking any action they can to come into the moment and let go of thoughts. So they're not catastrophizing, they're not worrying, they're just thinking like, what do I need to do? So I think the most important part, at any point, is kind of depending on intuition, actually. So getting the person to trust in their intuition, that all of their knowledge and stuff will come into play naturally during the climb, and just use their like conscious mind at the time to focus on what they have to do next, pay attention to the environment around them, and stay in that present moment with mindfulness. So it's all about being in the one moment, not anywhere else.
Yeah, because I suppose the tendency is to look ahead, isn't it, in some ways? What the what if scenario, what if this happens, what if that happens, and but as I climb a little bit further up, or it's steeper here, and again the what ifs. So as you say, you're grounding someone more so in the present. Let's think about this. And so you mentioned there about failing as well, the fear of failing. Do you want to just talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, so from what I understand, as people progress through their climbing journey and they get better and better, and maybe they even start like leading other groups through climbs, then it can be like coming a problem from a different angle. So rather than worrying whether or not they can achieve something, it's like maybe they've set a certain standard for themselves and they worry that they're not even going to keep up with that standard. So it could be like, do they have a problem and they can't lead that group properly? Or do they try a new wall and they're progressing, incrementally, and they're always getting better each time, but maybe they fear that the next challenging wall will actually be too difficult and things like that.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, there might be some comparisons going there with if they climb with friends or other peers, and in effect they rather than concentrating on what it is that they need to do to move up the wall, they're spending their minds are just clogged up with all of this junk and rubbish, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think actually social groups, have a massive part of it as well, because as we know, like with psychological work, our social circle has a massive impact. So actually there's research and personal evidence that shows that who people hang around with during training or even just climbing can really impact their confidence. So if they've got people around them who maybe don't train as well and they do fail more often, they might take on that fear even though it's not relevant to them. They might be training, more than enough and they're going to succeed fine. So I think social side is important.
And you've got social media as well and into the mix, where people could be posting lots of images about doing this, climbing A, B and C, and to the person who's not feeling great in themselves, has less confidence, then they just get into comparison and judgment mode, don't they? So there's certainly something to be aware of and to factor into the mix. So we'll leave it at that for today, and I'm sure we'll have other conversations about this topic and other topics. But I really appreciate your time, Alex, and thank you for chatting about this.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me.